I've like come to realize a few things. One is that like my number one thing, like I think I definitely have the ism. Um, but my number one thing is, and which has always been my number one thing, is an eating disorder and was an eating disorder. And um,
Welcome to the show, Kira.
thanks.
Coming all the way from Berlin.
Yep. Yep. I'm in Berlin right now. It's 6 p.m.
Now, so I know you seem to travel a lot. Like, is your dad like European or something? Because you seem to be over there, whether Berlin or you're in Africa. So every time I see you, you're somewhere different.
My dad is European. He's German, and yeah, he actually has no affiliation with the United States other than the fact that he
You.
married, yeah, other than the fact that he married my mother. So my mom is American and my dad is German. And my mom, after college, went to Africa to work in conservation. And my dad was there working. My dad works as a safari guide for professional hunting safaris, actually.
Oh
So,
shit.
yeah, they met there both working. And then yeah, I got married, raised a family there. Me and my brother were raised there. And then when they separated, when I was like 11 or 12, me, my mom, and younger brother moved to the US. But my dad continues to work in Africa. So he's part time in Africa. And then the other part of the time, he was living in Austria
Okay.
with his girlfriend
That
who
makes a
lives.
lot of sense to why I recently saw you in a safari, right? That I'm not making that up. You were on a safari
Yeah,
recently in the last like
mm-hmm.
yeah.
I was in Africa for the whole month of December.
That's
Um,
awesome.
yeah, just
That's
visiting, brought some friends over there.
and
Yeah.
so and you're also in law school, correct?
I'm pre-law, so
Okay.
I finished I finished my 4 years of undergraduate at UCLA. And then and then um this is my I graduated from UCLA in June, and this is my year off before
Gotcha.
law school. I decided to take a year off for a
Why
variety of
not?
reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah. So during this year off, I wanted to live somewhere abroad, and I wanted to specifically live somewhere German speaking because I'm half German and I speak German conversationally, but I wanted to get fluent in my German. And
Berlin is an awesome city too. Like let's be
yeah,
like I've been all not all over Germany. I've been in 3 different cities in Germany. Berlin, Cologne, and another one that was all cobblestones and my mom would kill me for not remember the name, but it was like our first stop when we flew into Frankfurt. Then we were in this one little city that was really old, and then we
yeah,
were in Berlin for a few days, and then Cologne for we only lasted like one day in Cologne before we went up to Belgium.
yeah.
Um,
There's so many different little towns and random cities and towns in Germany.
yeah,
So
so yeah, we were going there we had an exchange student live with us when I was like in 3rd grade, and she was from Berlin or Osnabrück
cool,
originally.
cool.
She was from Osnabrück, but living now she lives in Berlin with her husband and kids. So we visited her and got to see and got to like, get toured around Berlin of all the different sites there are. Like it's a really cool city. So let's
Yeah,
backtrack more to 11. You come to the United States. So what it we met in that's not no secret to say we met in AA, and that was 4.5 years ago when I was out there, and
yeah.
you were running the Thursday meetings at 26 and Broad. Were you and Taylor,
Okay.
the nooner? I have a weird memory, even though I was only there for 4 months.
Six and Broadway. You're right. You're right. I think I was the secretary,
You,
right?
yep,
Yeah.
and that's where we met originally because you and I started talking again because Taylor was on the show back earlier this year. I
Yeah.
had Taylor on, and she was at your house, like for part of it.
Yeah. 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 I remember. Yeah.
So, we have a bunch of mutual friends that like have been on this show that you would know from the rooms. What is
Mhm.
your clean date?
I'm currently not sober.
Well, I know that you drink. You're clean from your drug of choice though.
Yeah, yeah. My date, it was March 6th. I don't even remember the year. I like don't keep track of like I'm not
You're that
affiliated.
far away from it.
Yeah, I'm not affiliated with the
No,
program.
I
To
don't think that you
be
are.
completely honest with you and with the show, I currently am not affiliated with the program whatsoever.
Yeah,
Uh,
neither am I.
but yeah, like, but that's not to say that I have a lot of respect for the program. It obviously got me out of a really bad time in my life, and I don't think I would be where I am today if it weren't for it. It also taught me a lot of like living skills and just like practical skills to live and take care of myself. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, and I have a lot of great relationships from it. But I'm pretty far out of it.
Like
Uh,
I'm as far away as I can be from it while still remaining like because I use cannabis in my recovery and I'm extremely open about my cannabis use. But
okay.
I'm very open and honest about it because I want everything on the forefront. I want to be able to look at things and talk about them in a real honest sense because there's so many people that are in the rooms that are there and they use cannabis and they're afraid to talk about it. They're
Totally.
and so I was Cali sober when we met. Actually, I was in a rehab in LA called High Sobriety that introduced you to cannabis on a medical level instead of an
Mhm.
abuse level, and it was all about changing my relationship with it. So
Oh,
and I learned all that in AA, how to change my relationship with things, whether it was a person or whether it's an inanimate object or whether it's whatever. My biggest thing is I'm sober if my life's not unmanageable. That's in my opinion. According, like, I go by the steps like, oh, I don't say that I'm sober because I am sober from alcohol. I quit drinking 2.5 years ago. But I just use cannabis and that's it. I use it daily. I'm not gonna lie, but
yeah.
it's a medication. There's a lot of things going on up here that,
Right. So
that
wait,
I
so when
don't.
you say you're sober in the sense that like your life isn't unmanageable, is that what you said?
That is one of the like. So when I drank for
Hmm.
like I got clean 4.5 years ago. I went to rehab and my drug of choice was pills.
Right.
And so I went to rehab on my own at 31 years old with no intention of quitting drinking. It was
Mhm.
all for the intention of stop doing these oxys every day.
Okay. Yeah.
And then I was going to use cannabis anyway, so that was being introduced to me. So when I went through the steps, my sponsor was like, "You can use cannabis as long as it's not making your life unmanageable. Are you stealing money? Are you deceiving people for it? All the little things. Are you doing any of the tendencies that you used to do for the drug of choice? Is
Mhm.
that?" Once I realized, still to this day, I can go a week or a month without even having it because it's expensive
Yeah.
and it doesn't make me want to lie, cheat, or steal to get it.
Mhm.
So to me, my life is. And when I did drink again after 13 months clean and sober, I drank again because of the rooms and conservative PA were telling me that I wasn't sober anyway.
Mm.
And then I
Yeah.
got that in my head, and then I drank again for 9 months.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I
I
mean,
still
a lot
work the
of
steps
people.
every day, though.
Yeah. Yeah. I wouldn't say that I work the steps, but I definitely use those
The
kinds of
principles.
principles in my life for sure. And um, like I try, like I'm just now getting back on like a regular meditation routine because like things like meditation, like my life is better when it's when I'm regularly doing those things, which are things that I learned in the program.
Yeah, and they're really I don't want to. I never wanted to get in my head because my head is the worst place I could be, and I was always so worried when I was drinking. I was really like cognizant on how much did I drink tonight. Did I finish my full drink, or did I need to finish it all the way, or did I leave some left? All those little things that they talked about. And then I woke up hungover one day, and like I mean hungover, where my head even told me you got to either drink this away or get something stronger.
Yeah.
And that was the first time in that 9 months of drinking again where I went, oh, that's not good. I shouldn't be thinking that way.
Yeah.
And it happened to be leap day. It happened to be February 29th. So I said to my wife, hey, we should quit drinking. This is a perfect sober date. Um,
Sorry.
no, it's fine. But I was like, this is a perfect sober date for us. February 29th. Like, not many people can say that they quit drinking on that day. So 2.5 years later, I don't get an anniversary every year, but I
Uh,
celebrate when I can, when I realize, oh shit, it's the 29th. It's blah, blah, blah
yeah.
months. But that was my driving force, was having a cool sober date, and so we quit drinking together, and then lockdowns happened 2 weeks later. Like, we quit drinking on the 29th in 2020, and then March 12th everything shut down. So we're like, well, I guess we're gonna hunker down and not drink. And
And
so,
so you haven't drinking since?
nah, not a drop. Haven't even thought about it either. Because my wife ended up getting sick and now she has MS. So
Oh,
if you
sorry.
drink with MS to begin with, let alone if she's an alcoholic, like, she'll say it. I'm not putting words in her mouth. She'll say she's an alcoholic. And she knows that there's no going back anymore because her body literally won't be able to take it. So, or, that was another reason to be like, okay, now we have to stay sober because you have this new diagnosis that we kind of have to. MS is a whole beast in itself, let alone to feed it with something like alcohol. So I think we've had one beer in the fridge for 2.5 years.
Really?
Yeah,
I mean, that helps that I mean, she can't do it anyway, so then that's easier for,
we
I
do it
mean, more,
together,
yeah, more incentive for you guys to do it together.
and we use
But
cannabis every day together too.
yeah, that's cool. And yeah, and I think the fact, like, yeah, the factor, or you said that one factor that incentivized you guys to stop drinking is that you had that realization on that day and you wanted a cool sobriety day. And
Yeah,
I definitely relate to that, or not relate, but just like I totally agree with that idea of like whatever gets you there, whatever if it's some weird fact like that, or like
yeah,
good looking girl or good looking guy gets you to the meetings, whatever gets you there. So
yeah.
that's,
And let's be. And I was going to a lot of meetings because I had nothing else to do out there. When we
yeah,
first met, I was at 26 and Broad every day at noon. I was at Marina Center every night. I was at Marina Center every late night,
yeah,
and that was my meeting, was at 11 p.m. Marina Center. That was the one
yeah,
I wanted to go to every day.
yeah. It's fun,
And so,
social.
what is your drug of choice? What was it?
Um, I guess my drug of choice, like I started out with cocaine and then like meth, I guess, and I did heroin like a handful of times, but not more than a handful of times. Just like near the end of like my upper using, like the heroin was like a way to like come down, I guess. But to be honest with you, as like years have gone by and I've like reflected on all of that and these different phases in my life, um, I've like come to realize a few things. One is that like my number one thing, like I think I definitely have the ism, um, but my number one thing is, and which has always been my number one thing, is an eating disorder and was an eating disorder. And um, the eating disorder started at a really young age. I started going to eating disorder treatment centers at a really young age. And at some point, like I looked to drugs because to get out of my eating disorder, because I was like my eating disorder was making me so miserable, and I wanted to get out of it so badly, and the drugs were a way for me to get out of the misery of my eating disorder, or to numb out from the misery of my eating disorder, how miserable it was making me. um And so the program helped me a lot in that way too, because I'm a big proponent of the steps and the principles I learned in the steps, and like the steps, like a saying in the program is the steps don't care why you do them, and like the steps, I was introduced to them because of my drug use or whatever, but they indirectly like helped my eating disorder as well. And so I also got, this all happened at a very young age for me. Like I started using at like 14, and then like I got sober and relapsed a couple times because like my eating disorder would get bad when I would get sober. So then I'd reach out to drugs again. And then I finally got sober, or like sober for a long period of time at 18. And I was sober from 18. This is when I met you. I was sober from 18 to 21. I was like about to hit 4 years sober. So, which is to say, like, I was very young. I had never had a legal drink. I was very young when I got sober. I had all these other issues, like my eating disorder, other like traumatic stuff that had happened to me growing up, and all these mental health, depression issues. And so when I decided to drink, it was kind of like, it wasn't like a big secret thing. Like I thought about it for a while before I did it. I talked to my therapist that I was working with about it, and all of my support, before I did it, when I started to drink again. And it was kind of like, I don't really know what the result is going to be. And I would, say that. And I was open to this idea that like, I don't know what the result is going to be. Maybe in fact, I am an addict, alcoholic. Maybe I am. But the thing is that I'm not sure that I am, because of all these reasons. Part of me feels like that I might not be. So I want to go out and experiment, like the book itself tells you to do if you're not sure or whatever. And so I did that with a very open mind to the fact that maybe in fact I am. And if I do come to realize that yes, you are an addict alcoholic, I know exactly where to go.
Yeah.
I've been here for 4 years. And so I did that. I drank again, with all of this in mind, and with my loved ones knowing that I was going to do this. And the first time I drank, I had like half a glass of wine. Like it wasn't like a big,
Yeah.
I eased into it or whatever.
Crawled
And
before you went running.
yeah. And yeah, that was like,
And for the record, you're not the only person I had a guy on my show named Ken Anderson. He started this whole thing about harm reduction with drinking back like 10 years ago, and how to change your drinking. And he drinks once a week. And
oh,
it's like he gets like a bottle and he'll do 17 shots and not go on. His like rule is don't Facebook while you drink, like
mm,
all that kind of stuff, so you don't hear from him for the day. And then he has this giant group of like 10,000 people on, all they talk about is like it's called hams, harm reduction, something. It's all about only drinking, with certain purposes.
yeah,
So, and this is like celebrating, and stuff
yeah.
like that. Because, like you said, you were young when you like,
Yeah, no, that's an interesting concept, and I think different things work for different people. And as you said, there's a lot of more conservative people in the program who thinks that there's only one way.
and
Um,
maybe that for them it might be only one way.
yeah,
And
I was about to say maybe for certain kinds of addicts, alcoholics, like for lack of a better word, they say like the real ones, like maybe there really is only one way. And that's why sometimes I'm cautious about telling my story, especially to people in the program, because I don't want them to, get this idea in their head that like, oh, well, I can do that too, because like chances are like you are a real one and you can't do this.
yeah,
I'm not. I like now I've been not sober for like 3 years, and I genuinely don't have a problem when it comes to drugs and alcohol.
This podcast is also sponsored by BetterHelp. If you are looking for therapy and not able to get something right away locally, you can do that with them. Within 48 hours, you can find a therapist to get on telehealth with you. I mean, I haven't heard anything but great things from people that have already done it, that watch my show or listen to my show. If you're looking to get 10% off your first month, you can go to betterhelp.com/MJsPNPMCA. That is betterhelp.com/MJsPNPMCA.
And to me, that's most important. That's why I wanted you on the show, is because it does show a different angle in it. I've talked to so many people that are sober, clean and sober. They use cannabis or they drink here and there. And it's important to have that mix. And also the eating disorder. I want to have more people on this season that have had struggles with mental health, not just around addiction. Because addiction's just, if MS has taught me anything, is that addiction disease is bullshit compared to MS, right? Like addiction's a whole other beast, but MS is a whole new beast. So I've kind of looked at, calling myself the clinical definition of addiction, an addict, because I see a real disease. I see what happens when someone's body is breaking down in front of them. And I don't feel that way about my disease of addiction. I'm just minimizing it a little bit because there's a whole lot of things that I want to cover. So that's why I was like, Kira, would you want to, like, I know you drink here and there, but I don't care about that. Would you want to do that? Because it's important for people to know of people like, I can use cannabis and stay sober and not want to get high. And I say not get high as in, like, if I wanted to do drugs, I would have done the drugs by now.
Yeah.
Like,
and also important to note that that's not the case for everyone.
There's certain people that can't even use cannabis because it triggers them.
Of course. Yeah.
So
and
everybody's different.
For most of the people in the program, maybe for most of the people in the program, it wouldn't be a good idea. But it is to say that there isn't just one way.
So when you moved to the States, where did you land in Los Angeles?
No, initially to Orange County. So I moved from East Africa, Tanzania to Orange County, which was quite the culture shock.
You literally was like Mean Girls.
Yeah.
I just realized that.
Yeah.
It basically based that on you. You came back and you were Africa. I just realized that. Oh shit.
Yeah.
I'm sure you related as a young kid to that too, like being out of place.
People would always note that about me. They're like, "Oh, you're like Mean Girls."
That's funny, and I just realized it. All right, so you moved back, and within 3 years of being here, like, that's when you just started your eating disorder? Is that when you found drugs first, or like?
No, I started like modeling at a really young age, and I think that definitely fueled my eating disorder because I mean, I guess it's pretty obvious. It's a totally look-based industry, and so I became obsessed with my look and my body image and everything. And turns out when you become obsessed with something like that, it's really not good for you. And so, I think that definitely was a big part that fueled my eating disorder. I mean, maybe I would have had the eating disorder either way, but it definitely fueled it. And I mean, there's other traumatic things that happened. Like I was my first time having a best friend, and we were like attached at the hip, like sleeping at each other's houses, like more often than not every week. And then she suddenly died when I was 14. When we were both 14, she died of a brain aneurysm at 14, which is like so rare.
Yeah. Holy shit.
And it was like this whole traumatic thing where like she basically died in my arms. And so I was like definitely traumatized from this whole thing. And then I had the eating disorder going on. And then, I think the eating disorder just got worse. And I started looking for and all this other stuff. And then I started looking for ways to escape. And
You're the oldest of two, right? You and your brother?
Yeah, my brother's 2 years younger, and I mean, for most of our upbringing, like all the attention was on me because everyone was worried about me because I was off running and gunning in and out of treatment centers, like going to ERs, mental health facilities, like, my brother's pretty, he followed a pretty traditional path. 4 years of high school, graduated high school. When I didn't graduate high school, ultimately I got my GED, and then when I was sober, not because I wasn't doing well in school, I'm actually super studious, super good at school, but because all this other stuff, and then I got in with the wrong crowd and was using drugs, whatever. So then I couldn't manage to
Well, yeah,
graduate.
14 that's your coming of age. That's like when your best friend is your,
Yeah,
literally your companion, and you like you said, attached. Like it
yeah,
made me think about my best friend. Him and I met in first grade, and we still talk about, like, we remember at the chalkboard meeting each other,
yeah,
and and my dad became his dad's best friend. You know what I
yeah,
mean? And then yeah, so and then when we were 14, his dad suddenly died from leukemia.
oh god.
And so, but when we were 11, we had our first drink together. It was Captain Morgan and Coke, and we watched The Outsiders, and we thought we were cool.
The Outsiders, love it.
And we thought we were cool, but when we were 12, a kid that we knew got hit by a car and died. And that was the first time that I can recall looking back and saying, "Hey, man, if we drink, we're gonna feel better." And
Yeah,
that's the ism right there,
yeah,
is the I'm drinking to take this pain away, as opposed to cheers, celebrate life. you
yeah,
know it's a
totally.
totally different thing. So in 14, that's your age, that you're not at home, you want to be out and about with your friends. So
Yeah,
I can imagine it being a really easy thing in Orange County for you to fall in with the wrong crowd of people that don't, like, obviously you're super studious. Anybody that finishes 4 years of college, you'd have, like, all the writing that you have to do, like, um so what was the first thing, like, Coke was the first thing that you got into, then you realized that it would help you, like, for modeling?
yeah. I mean, the first things I ever did was drinking and weed, and then I think the first time I did coke, I was 14. The first time I drank and smoked weed was with my best friend who died. So that was before she died, obviously.
Mhm.
Uh, but then the first time I did coke was after she died. So it was like at 14, and um yeah, and the like at this point, I mean, I don't want to make this too much about my eating disorder, but eating disorders are such a big part of
Well, no,
it's
it's, yeah, exactly. I want to hear your story. You know what I mean? I don't want to.
yeah. Okay, so like my eating disorder, there's different kinds of eating disorders, right? And my eating disorder started off as like purely anorexia, so I just like wasn't eating, and that was definitely fueled by the modeling. Um, I actually remember being told by an agency at like 12, that like it would probably be good if I could lose a little bit of weight. And so
At 12. You
yeah,
imagine telling what? You imagine looking at a 12-year-old today and saying, "Hey, you got to drop a few."
yeah, I know, nuts. And like I was I was like I was like fairly thin. Like I wasn't like I was just like normal, you know what I mean? But anyway, so yeah, that definitely fueled anorexia. But then the anorexia kind of evolved into bulimia, and I think it's because like I know this now, knowing so much about eating disorders, is like I deprived my body of all this food, and I would make all these rules for myself that, like, I became, first of all, my body's like craving all this food, and also like I have this like obsession with food. Like I'm always thinking of food. Even in the anorexia, I might not be eating, but I'm always thinking of food. And because I'm like trying to restrict my food so much, it turned into this like uh, episodes of like binging on a ton of food, because that's like what happens when you try to control something so much, is like it becomes out of control. And so then, yeah, I went through these episodes of like binging on a bunch of food, but then like there's this fear of like gaining weight, and I'm modeling and I can't gain weight. And even if I wasn't modeling, like I can't handle that if I gained weight. And so then I would like throw it up. And so then my eating disorder was like purely bulimia, and I would just be like eating and throwing up. And ultimately that's why I dropped out of school. Like my bulimia, when it was like at its height, looked like I could not leave my bedroom. I couldn't go to school, nor could I leave my bedroom, because like I was just like eating and throwing up all day. Like it was really dark. It's like not talked about very much. I think maybe that's also another reason why I transitioned into like drugs and alcohol, because like when you go to like rehabilitation centers for drugs and alcohol, or meetings for drugs and alcohol, like there's a little bit of a sense that it's cool, like to use and to get high, and everyone has their like
Stories.
their running and gunning stories, and they're like
Drunken logs. Yeah.
yeah, and they kind of show off a little, and it's kind of cool. Like if you go to like any eating disorder 12-step meetings or eating disorder treatment centers, or like it's not cool. Like no one thinks it's cool. Like it's really, everyone's feels a lot of shame. Like it's really shameful. It's kind of like you don't really talk about it.
And plus, let's look at like from an outside perspective. You go to drugs, you go to rehab, they're taking away the drugs and the alcohol. When you go to a treatment center for eating, you have to still eat. That's like going into a treatment to learn how to use drugs. You have
Yeah.
to learn how to eat appropriately. Like, what was that movie that I saw on Netflix? I watched a movie on Netflix. I'm blanking on the name, but it was all about like a girl going into a bunch of rehabs, like treatment centers for eating. And I'm blanking on the name right now off the top of my head, but it was really well done. It was really well done.
No,
If
but it's true. Like eating disorder treatment centers, because as you said, the recovery is different, and like you just cut out drugs and alcohol, whereas you have to learn how to have a relationship with food. Eating disorder treatment centers are next level. Like at this point in my like I've been to both. I've been to a ton of both drug and alcohol rehabs and eating disorder treatment centers. And I remember when I started going to drug and alcohol rehabs, and people would always complain about being there and stuff. And I would just be like, you guys have no idea. Like, this is fucking heaven compared to eating disorder treatment centers. Like, because yeah, those treatment centers are so gnarly. You can't do anything. You can't even go to the bathroom without someone like watching you go to the bathroom, or you have to count while you're going to the bathroom, so they know that you're not throwing up. Like there's so many more rules. It's miserable.
I can't even. So, and this was all happening in your teen years too. Like these are like coming of age, formidable years, and you're either spending them in bed and with bulimia. Like, so break down. I know the difference, but people that are watching, they might not know the difference from bulimia to anorexia and how that looks different.
Yeah, so the bulimia is characterized by the cycle of binging and purging. Binging is eating a bunch of food, and purging is throwing up. And then anorexia is just like restricting food.
Like starvation, kind of.
Yeah, starvation, kind of. But bulimia, like the purging doesn't have to be throwing up. Like I don't know, some people would binge and then like eat, or like use laxatives, or like then over exercise. Like that was their form of purging, or like or it would be like having these huge binges, but then like the next day not eating at all for a day or two. Like I don't know. Yeah, but there's the differences.
Yeah, it sounds like your drug of choice was control.
Yeah, it was definitely control. I think I definitely struggled with the control problem, maybe still do in some aspects in general, but yeah, specifically with food control. And maybe, yeah, maybe lack of control in other areas of my life. I wanted to control my food. I don't know.
Now, were
But yeah,
you traveling a lot then too? Like, cause like I've been friends with you now for a few years, so I've been following you. You know, I always see your story. You're somewhere different. Like we just talked about how we started
yeah.
this. You're either in Africa or you're in Europe somewhere. Like, were you traveling that much as a teenager? Or is that more now because your life is more in order?
Um, so like when I first moved to the US, I would go back every summer to Africa to like visit my dad and just visit my home. You know, I have a lot of like uh
Childhood friends.
yeah, exactly, childhood friends there. And then when I was modeling, like I did a little bit of traveling for modeling. And then when I started going to treatment centers, I would sometimes be in different places for treatment. But yeah, when things got really bad, I wasn't traveling. And then um when I was sober for those 4 years, I didn't really travel very much. Maybe a little bit to visit my dad here and there, but not very much.
Do you have dual citizenship, or do you
Yeah, I
just live
have citizenship.
for Germany or
Germany. For Germany and yeah, the US.
that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I am like so glad because I didn't know any of that stuff. Obviously, like when I meet you, people in the rooms, you know, very rarely do I hear any other story. You know what
Right.
I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and everyone's story is valid, and I think it's important to note that you can have a life beyond your wildest dreams. You know, even it would just and again, it's controlling though. You got to make sure that you're not over drinking, and you know, if your life's not unmanageable. To
Right.
me, that's the biggest thing: is your life manageable, or is it falling out of place?
Yeah.
And it sounds like your life is pretty manageable right now.
Yeah, it's pretty manageable right now. Yeah.
And that doing that daily meditation, that reflection, I'm sure helps keep it in line too, because
Yeah, it definitely does.
when you're not doing your meditation, then you're not doing any kind of inward looking and it can be a wreck.
Yeah, yeah. And like yeah, like my yes, definitely. And the eating disorder like is my main struggle. So like when I'm not in tune and doing those inward reflection things, like that's the first thing that like I will reach towards to try to control is like food stuff. But like, you know, maybe I'll struggle for a day with some kind of or just like obsession stuff, but I don't like it doesn't look like how it used to be, that's for sure. And I think another important thing to know is that like another reason why getting sober was so important for me at that time is because it was definitely something that was also fueling my eating disorder. And a lot of these things like are connected. So sometimes like get a handle on it, like you kind of need to stop all of it, you know?
Yeah, put the plug in jar, as they say, for a little bit. And it's not even surprising me that they kind of intertwine because you like we talked about, you had to learn how to eat. You have to learn how to and so why wouldn't you learn how to drink and keep an eye on it? It's the same as, you know, just one drug. The drug of choice is control.
Yeah,
The one thing that you're looking for is, can I control this or is it controlling me?
right, right.
So that's awesome. Though I'm glad that we got the chance to sit down and hear more because I didn't know anything about like I just
Yeah,
knew that you travel to see your dad all the time. So, but that's super cool that you know you came from Africa and you know you got
yeah,
in through the struggle. And let's be real, eating disorders, they're still well like it's still a problem. Like yeah, they have the plus size models these days, but there's still that problem of up here and what we tell ourselves and the lies that we tell ourselves.
yeah.
So
Yeah, and that translates to like all the addictions, just the lies that we tell ourselves.
that's why it was so important for me, because I knew that you do drink, but I know that every time I've seen you with a drink in like your Instagram stories or something like that, it's in a controlled setting. You're not like drinking alone doing shots by yourself. You're celebrating with your family. You're doing some kind of thing. You and your brother travel a lot together. It seems like
Yeah,
you have a really close relationship. Like
yeah,
that's awesome. Is to have that relation. And even now, you're living in Berlin with your dad. Like that must be awesome to be able to like walk around. I love walking around that city. It was such a cool city to walk around.
yeah. It's such an awesome city. It just has such good energy, and yeah,
My
really.
favorite site was the Holocaust thing, where it's
Yeah,
like the different like levels of
yeah.
the things.
I know.
My brother and I like stumbled upon it. My mom was like on some other tour. My brother and I were together, and we stumbled across it. We're like, holy shit, this is so cool. Like we had a really fun time in Berlin. So
Yeah,
I can see why you're there, and I can see the outlets behind you, and and like remind me of being over there. So thank you so much for sitting down, Kira, and telling your story, because it is valid still. Just because you're not in any kind of program doesn't
yeah.
mean that your story can't help somebody who's struggling with eating or drinking or using. So
Totally.
thank you for being so honest about all that. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. And if you ever find yourself in Berlin again, you or your wife, hit me up.
100%. Thanks, Kira. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.